Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. One of the most critical things we are as elected officials is lawmakers, and we should never take that too lightly. It is the thing we do. We make the law, and it's fitting that we're here today making this law. It wasn't a law that actually legalized abortion. There was no General Assembly anywhere or no federal Congress that took up this bill and made it legal. In fact, when it was made legal by the court, the vast majority of the people didn't think it was right. 90% of the people believed that abortion was wrong when it was legalized by a court. And I always am reluctant to have the courts making our laws. We passed a law in here a couple of years ago regarding caps, and our court just overturned a law that we made. We're the people's representative, and we ought to be making the law, and we're doing that today, and I commend you for taking it up. I find that we're following China in many ways. China has gone through their socialist movement. We're beginning down that road to serfdom ourselves, and I'm reluctant that we're heading in this direction to find out what China has found out in the last few years, that there is a purpose for capitalism, and hopefully they'll find their way in regards to abortion. Back in 1990, most of you all know, I got the chance to teach English as a second language in China. And I had one of my Chinese students. She was a young professional. She and her husband were married, and they had a child. They had a girl child. And one day I was asking my Chinese students, I said, and to provoke them to speak English, I said, if you could change anything about China, what would you change? And she said, I would like to have another baby. I said, well, why can't you have a baby? Of course, I knew the answer to that because the Chinese government wouldn't let them have another baby. I said, well, what would happen if you and your husband just had a baby anyway? Well, there were a couple of options. One is the child would have no identity and they would have to hide it for the rest of their life. The child couldn't go to school, couldn't be a part of the government. It would just be the child would have to live at home with them. But if the government found out, both of them would lose their job. And the other thing that could happen, if she was found to be pregnant, they would take her down to the local clinic and force an abortion, kicking and screaming. Now, you say, well, we will never go there. America could never do something like that. But once you devalue life, you devalue it at every level. One of the big debates we've just had about Obamacare is whether seniors get coverage at the end of life that they would have gotten prior to the bill passing. Now, I'm not saying it's in the bill or out of the bill, but the big discussion and the fear of seniors was that somehow at the end of life they would not get the care that they would have gotten if they were younger, because we're going to have to apportion based on revenue how much care a person gets. I have heard this said to me before. All those women that are drawing welfare, they ought to sterilize them. I've heard many people say, we ought to sterilize prisoners. But you know how far it is from a thought to an action? One bill that passes. We're lawmakers, and if we ever do anything, it ought to be to protect life and to ensure that we never make the decision to devalue life. Now, I'll tell you, there is not much difference from saying you can only have one child to saying you can choose whether that child is a girl or a boy. Now, currently, we can say you can choose whether that you have a girl baby or a boy baby, and if you don't like your first choice and you're pregnant with that choice, then you can abort the child and have another. This is dangerous territory. If you'd asked the folks in Germany, would they have ever gone to the point of the Holocaust, they would have said, of course we wouldn't do that. But they did do that. And when we devalue life in the least little way, we make ourselves vulnerable to much more horrible consequences. Our founding fathers, when they gave us the pursuit of life, they never thought that we would take the life of a child. That was the farthest thing from their mind. This is an attempt to say, we don't want to make those choices about race and gender when it comes to an abortion. We want to prevent that from happening so that whatever the baby is, it has a chance of life. Mr. President, no question, I'll yield the will.
No question, Senator.